Swami, all glories to you. All glories to you. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please welcome. This is to Byzantium, all goes to confirm the church of Vaibhava.
Yes, good morning.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, got a few here.
Three of us presently, others will join. Chaitanya Prema
Now,
Prabhu is instructing.
when I'm looking at the, the way they scheduled the class, it seems like they had longer classes, to cover so much in one lesson. But these are very short classes. So anyway, we'll carry on. Tamal Krishna. All right. Madhuvan. Where are you, Tamal? Where are you?
Ibadan, Nigeria.
Nigeria, which city?
Madhu. I didn't hear what you said,
I'm not hearing it clearly, but anyway, the video is very clear. Except Madhuvan has backlight. That's not good. You should have the light in your face.
Okay. What about this, Maharaj?
Yeah, it's better. Yeah, you have a bright light behind you, so that's the problem. The camera doesn't have the ability to adjust. So I guess we should start right off, and hopefully the others will show up.
Yes.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Udiraye Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavat Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Idam Bhagavatam Nama Purana Brahma Samitam Uttama Shloka Charitam Shakara Bhagavan Rishi Nishayasaya Lokasya Danyam Swastayanam Mahat. This Bhagavatam is completely spiritual, and it is all auspicious for everyone. That's the basic of that one. Conceivable. So what we should be thinking, we're reading the Bhagavatam not just for knowledge, so that we can repeat something or pass a test, on specific things. We should be reading it because we're associating with Prabhupada, especially with Rup Sut Goswami, Sukadev Goswami, Maharaj Pariksit, Yudhisthira, Pandavas, Krishna. We're getting their intimate association by reading Srimad Bhagavatam. And that's what we want to relish that. But also, these Leelas, these are the stories in the Bhagavatam are chosen, especially because they have transcendental lessons. So how we can apply in our own personal life, examine yourself, self-realization, and how, especially here, we have government guidelines, leadership for our society, because we have to run it. We want to have a spiritual society. So these examples are there, the Pandavas, Parikshit, Yudhisthira, all of them, of perfect transcendental leadership. Then we can have it, do something to change the world. So we left off on chapter 18, verse number 15. O Sutta, you are learned and pure devotee of the Lord because the personality of Godhead is your chief object of service. Please therefore describe to us the pastimes of the Lord, which are above all material conception, for we are anxious to receive such messages. So this is the way to approach a teacher. I mean, we're supposed to honor the teacher. Nowadays, I don't know how it is still in Africa and America and in Japan. Students are so disrespectful to the teachers. And it's a very difficult job to be a teacher sometimes. But we should glorify the speaker. And here he's saying, because he's a pure devotee of the Lord, because the personality of Godhead is the chief object of service. So we want to know the pastimes of the Lord. We should always want to hear the pastimes of the Lord. And that's what devotees are doing. So, who would like to read this purport? Unmute and quick, so we don't wait all day.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yeah.
The speaker on the transcendental activities of the Lord should have only one object of worship and service, Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the audience for such topics should be anxious to hear about him. When such a combination is possible, namely a qualified speaker and a qualified audience, it is then and there very much congenial to continue discourses on the transcendental. Professional speakers and a materially absorbed audience cannot derive real benefit from such discourses. Professional speakers make a show of Bhagavatam Saptaha for the sake of family maintenance, and the materially disposed audience hears such discourses of Bhagavatam Saptaha from such material benefits, namely religiosity, wealth, gratification of the senses, or liberation. Such Bhagavatam discourses are not purified from the contaminations of the material quality, but the discourses between the saints of Nine, Saraya, and Sri Sutta Goswami are on the transcendental level. There is no motive for material gain. In such discourses, unlimited transcendental pleasure is relished both by the audience and the speaker, and therefore they can continue the topic for many thousands of years. Now, Bhagavatam Saptahas are held for 7 days only, and after finishing the show, both the audience and the speaker become engaged in material activities as usual. They can do so because the speaker is not Bhagavata Pradhana and the audience is not to sit down as explained above.
All right. Sapta means 7 days. So Sukadev Goswami and Parikshit, they were 7 days, all day, night. But these Bhagavad Saptahas are a few hours every night. People pay to come. And they don't hear the whole Bhagavatam, they hear certain parts of it that are pleasing to the senses. And there's a lot of musical entertainment and other things along with it. And then they think they've perfected their life in a year. But the speaker also is getting a lot of money, charging a fee. So it's not spiritually very powerful, effective. And it doesn't make people devotees. Prabhupada's Bhagavad speaking has made so many people devotees. He's the real greatest Bhagavad speaker. All right. Next one, I'll read the verse and then somebody get ready for the purport. Sutta Goswami. And this thing says there, like if the speaker is pure and then the audience also, Prabhupada gives the example, like if the man is potent and the woman is fertile, then when they combine, they'll have children. So if the speaker is pure and audience is anxious to hear, then there will be the result of spiritual advancement, purification of the atmosphere. Next verse. O Sutta Goswami, please describe those topics of the Lord by which Maharaj Parikshit, whose intelligence was fixed on liberation, attained the lotus feet of the Lord, who is the shelter of Garuda, the king of birds. These topics were vibrated by the son of Vyas, Sukadev.
There is some controversy amongst the students on the path of liberation. Such transcendental students are known as impersonalists and devotees of the Lord. The devotee of the Lord worships the transcendental form of the Lord, whereas the impersonalist meditates upon the glaring effulgence or the bodily rays of the Lord, known as the Brahma Jyoti. Here in this verse, it is said that Maharaj Parikshit attained the lotus feet of the Lord by instructions in knowledge delivered by the son of Vyasadeva, Srila Sukadev Goswami. Sukadev Goswami was also an impersonalist in the beginning, as he himself has admitted in the Bhagavatam 2nd Canto, Chapter 1, text number 9. But later on, he was attracted by the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, and thus became a devotee. Such devotees with perfect knowledge are called Maha Bhagavatas, or first-class devotees. There are 3 classes of devotees, namely the Prakrita, Madhyama, and Mahabhagavat. The Prakrita or third-class devotees are temple worshippers without specific knowledge of the Lord and the Lord's devotees. The Madhyama or the second-class devotee knows well the Lord, the Lord's devotees, the neophytes and the non-devotees also. But the Mahabhagavat, or the first-class devotee, sees everything in relations with the Lord and the Lord's presence in everyone's relation. The Mahabhagavat, therefore, does not make any distinction particularly between a devotee and non-devotee. Maharaj Parikshit was such a Mahabhagavat devotee because he was initiated by a Mahabhagavat devotee, Sukadev Goswami. He was equally kind even to the personality of Kali, and what to speak of others. So there are many instances in the transcendental history of the world of an impersonalist who has later become a devotee. But a devotee has never become an impersonalist. This very fact proves that on the transcendental steps, the steps occupied by a devotee is higher than the steps occupied by an impersonalist. It is also stated in the Bhagavad Gita 12:5 that persons stuck on the impersonal step undergo more sufferings than achievements of reality. Therefore, knowledge imparted by Sukadev Goswami unto Maharaj Parishit helped him attain the service of the Lord. And this stage of perfection is called Pavaga, or the perfect stage of liberation. Simple knowledge of liberation is material knowledge. Actual freedom from material bondage is called liberation. But attainment of the transcendental service of the Lord is called the perfect stage of liberation. Such a stage is attained by knowledge and renunciation. As we already explained, Bhagavad Gita, the Bhagavatam, 1st Canto, chapter 2, text number 12. And perfect knowledge, as delivered by Sukadev Goswami, results in the attainment of the transcendental service of the Lord. Hare Krishna.
Okay. That's pretty clear, right?
Yeah.
Of course, this comes up a lot. Yesterday, I was talking to some group from India about the Prakriti, the Kanishta Mahabhagavat, and we have to be careful not to judge others, and we should be looking at ourselves. Am I a Kanishta? Am I what am I? Am I really trying to become am I an illusion thinking I'm a Mahabhagavat or something? And be careful not judging others. Like someone was asking, if someone just comes to the temple once a week or does some service, are they Kanishta? So I told him that that's not, what one's Kanishta Madhyam has nothing to do with how much donation you give or how often you come to the temple. It's your mentality, how you're worshiping Krishna and how you respect the other devotees. The Kanishta, the real Kanishta, they don't preach, they just worship on their own. And the most serious Kanishta thinks that he's the only devotee, the rest are all not really devotees. We're trying to become Madhyam, and then at Madhyam we have to discriminate between the real devotees but offer respect to anyone who's chanting. But some of them, if they're not behaving properly, we don't want to associate with them. Okay, next verse.
Maharaj, please, I'd like to please explain to us on this point Prabhupada made. He classified 3 stages here in the last stanza of the purport. He said, simple knowledge of liberation is material knowledge. Simple knowledge simple knowledge of liberation is material knowledge. Actual freedom from material knowledge, from material bondage is called liberation. But attainment of the transcendental service of the Lord is called the perfect state of liberation. So my clarification I want is on the first 2. Simple knowledge of liberation is material knowledge. So I'd like to explain about these 2 stages: knowledge of liberation and freedom from material bondage. Because Prabhupada seemingly put all of them below perfect state of liberation here, which is bad. But I want to know the difference between these 2. Simple knowledge of material knowledge. Simple knowledge of liberation.
Well, basically that, someone that is just after liberation, they have some knowledge that the material world, they're suffering, everything is temporary, and they want to get out of it. but they don't want to serve Krishna or anything. They just want to relieve their suffering. So that's the situation. For devotee is not concerned with liberation because liberation is just automatic factor of bhakti, freedom from material entanglement. So it's some things Prabhupada said that requires intelligence. You know, we have to pray to Krishna because that's why Lord Chaitanya gave us this Achintya Beta Beta Tattva, and it's extremely important thing to keep in mind when we're trying to understand these things. It's simultaneously one and different. It's simultaneously spiritual and material, some things. Like Krishna says, I'm immortality and I am death personified. Both is Krishna. Both spirit and matter are in me. Okay?
Okay, Maharaj. So, sorry, Maharaj. So, could we say that simple knowledge of liberation referred to here by Srila Prabhupada means to have a knowledge that the divinity is a spirit soul, and actual freedom is when one realizes that it's a spirit soul.
Yeah, when we actually realize, realization means you act on it. So the Gyanis, they want liberation, but they just gather knowledge, and but they don't want to serve. They just want to get out of suffering. So in one sense, it's material knowledge, just how to find your way. Neti, it's not this, it's not that,
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay, this is my understanding. Next verse. Narrate to us the narrations of the unlimited, for they are purifying and supreme. They were spoken to Maharaj Parikshit, and they are very dear to the pure devotees, being full of bhakti yoga. So they're glorifying the speaker and then telling him what they want. They want to hear about Krishna. They're not asking for any other knowledge. They're not asking for liberation. They're not asking for, mukti or anything. They just want to hear about Krishna. That is the perfection. Report.
What was spoken to Maharaj Parikshit and what is very dear to the pure devotee is Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is mainly full of the narrations of the activities of the Supreme Unlimited. And therefore, it is the science of Bhakti Yoga, or the devotional service of the Lord. Thus it is para, or supreme, because although it is enriched with all knowledge and religion, it is specifically enriched with the devotional service of the Lord.
Carry on.
Okay, text number 18. Sri Goswami said, "O God, although we are born in a mixed case, we have still promoted birthright simply by serving and following the great who are advanced in knowledge. Even by conversing with such great souls, one can without delay cleanse oneself of all disqualifications resulting from lower birth." Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Sutta Goswami did not take his birth in a Brahmana family. He was born in a family of mixed caste, or an uncultured low family. But because of higher association like Sri Sukadev Goswami, And the great Rishi of Naimisaranya, certainly the disqualification of inferior birth was washed out. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu followed these principles in pursuance of the Vedic usages. And by his transcendental association, he elevated many low-born, or those disqualified by birth or action, to the status of devotional service and established them in the position of acharyas or authorities. He clearly stated that any man, whatever he may be, whether a Brahmana or Shudra by birth, or a householder or mendicant in the order of society, if he is conversant with the science of Krishna, he can be accepted as an acharya or guru, a spiritual master. Sutta Goswami learned the science of Krishna from great rishis and authorities like Sukadev and Vyasadeva. And he was so disqualified, he was so qualified that even the sages of Naimisaranya eagerly wanted to hear from him the science of Krishna in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam. So he had the double association of great souls by hearing and preaching. Transcendental science, or the science of Krishna, has to be learned from the authorities. And when one preaches the science, he becomes still more qualified. So Sutta Goswami had both the advantages. And thus, undoubtedly, he was completely freed from all disqualification of low birth and mental agonies. This verse definitely proves that Sukadev Goswami did not refuse to teach Sutta Goswami about the transcendental science, nor did the sages of Naimisaranya refused to hear lessons from him because of his inferior birth. This means that thousands of years ago, there was no bar to learning or preaching the transcendental science because of inferior birth. The rigidity of the so-called caste system in Hindu society became prominent within only 100 years or so, when the number of Brija Bandhus, or disqualified men in the families of higher caste, increased. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu revived the original Vedic system, and he elevated Thakura Adidas Thakur to the position of Nama Acharya, or the authority in preaching the glories of the holy name of the Lord. Although His Holiness Haridas Thakur was pleased to appear in the family of Mohammedans. Such is the power of pure devotees of the Lord. The Ganges water is accepted as pure, and one can become purified after taking a bath in the water of the Ganges. But as far as the great devotees of the Lord are concerned, they can purify a degraded soul, even by being seen by the lowborn. And what to speak of association? Lord Sita Mahaprabhu wanted to purify the whole atmosphere of the polluted world by sending qualified preachers all over the world. And it remains with the Indians to take up this task scientifically and thus do the best kind of humanitarian work. The mental disease of the present generation are more acute than bodily disease. It is quite fit and proper to take up the preaching of Srimad Bhagavatam all over the world without delay. Mahatma Nam Abhida Nam also means dictionary of great devotees, or a book full of the words of great devotees. Such a dictionary of the words of great devotees and those of the Lord are in the Vedas and allied literatures, specifically the Srimad Bhagavatam.
Okay, where are you now?
I think now, go to verse 19. I just finished 18.
In what?
19 to be, we are in 19 now. I just finished 18.
So Sutta Goswami is also showing humility, saying he's born in a mixed class because his father, Brahmaharshan Sutta, he was, what was it? His father was a Brahmin and the mother was a Sudra, Vaishya or something. But he was also a disciple of Vyasadeva. So that, again, that's showing something that the birth doesn't matter ultimately, but somehow Ramaharshan became proud, and that was due to his next birth. But Sutta Goswami was pure, so he could take it up. Text 19. What to speak of those who are under the direction of the great devotees, chanting the holy name of the unlimited, who has unlimited potency. The personality of Godhead, unlimited in potency and transcendental by attributes, is called Ananta. And the audience is so highly qualified. They're already glorifying Krishna very, wonderfully. Okay, someone else read the purport now? Who else do we have now?
Shitra Prabhu, are you there? Can you read the purport? Shitra Prabhu.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
The Bandhu, or the less intelligent, uncultured men of higher caste, put forward many arguments against the lower caste men, becoming permanent in this life. They argue that birth in a family of supers or less than supers is made possible by one people's act, and that one therefore has to complete the terms of disadvantages due to lower birth. And to answer these false logicians, Srimad Bhagavatam says that one who chants the holy name of the Lord under the direction of a pure devotee can at once get free from the disadvantage due to a lower caste birth. A pure devotee of the Lord does not commit any offense while chanting the holy name of the Lord. There are 10 different offenses in the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. To chant the holy name under the direction of a pure devotee is offenseless. It's offenseless chanting. Offenseless chanting of the holy name of the Lord is transcendental, and therefore such chanting can at once purify one from the effect of all kinds of previous sins. This offenseless chanting indicates that one has fully understood the transcendental nature of the holy name and has thus surrendered unto the Lord. Transcendentally, the holy name of the Lord and the Lord himself are identical, being absolute. The holy name of the Lord is as powerful as the Lord. The Lord is the all-powerful personality of Godhead, and he has innumerable names, which are all non-different from each, and are equally powerful also. In the last word of the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord accepts that one who surrenders fully unto him is protected from all sins by the grace of God, since his name and he himself are identical. The holy name of the Lord can protect the devotee from all effects of sin. The chanting of the holy name of the Lord can undoubtedly deliver one from the disadvantage of the lower caste birth. The Lord's unlimited power is extended on and on by unlimited expansion of the devotee and incarnation. And that every devotee of the Lord and incarnations also can equally surcharge with the potency of the Lord. Since the devotee is surcharged with the potency of the Lord, even fractionally, the disqualification due to lower birth cannot stand in the way.
Okay. Dvijabandhu, that's kind of important, especially in this age when people are very concerned about, their birth, that, they're born as a Brahmin or they're born in their Kshatriya family. Like in India, you can tell by someone's name what kind of family they were born in, but very few of them act as Vaishyas or real Kshatriyas, or especially real Brahmanas. So those are they're friends of the Brahmins, and they're not really qualified. So this purport is stressing the power of chanting the holy name and that we've seen all over the world. Prabhupada would say even Africans are chanting and they're becoming very good devotees. He didn't have any prejudice to think that anybody is low class because of their birth. But he would use these examples because other people are thinking of that. They have their idea of, like Hitler, he read the word Aryan and somehow he read some Vedas, but he decided Aryan just meant the white European men, people, and everyone else was low class or something. So that's not at all what it means. Aryan is also a standard of behavior, high class behavior. That's not dependent on one's birth. It's dependent on one's education. And by Lord Chaitanya, by giving us the holy name, the chanting of the holy name will elevate anybody. Even those that are born in a Brahmin family but are fallen and degraded, they can become purified again. And that's the real Vedic thing, that you judge by the consciousness, not by the birth, not by the country one's born in or the family one's born in or any of that. That's all. Krishna says Janma Karma. He says, what is it? The activities and your karma. Chaturvarna Maya Shishtam Guna Karma. One's qualities and one's activities is how you decide how you can know, what we are. All right. So spread the holy name, uplift everyone. Kali Yuga, everyone is born a Sudra. Text 20. It is now ascertained that the personality of Godhead is unlimited and there is none equal to him. Consequently, no one can speak of him adequately. Great demigods cannot obtain the favor of the goddess of fortune, even by prayers, but this very goddess renders service unto the Lord, although he is unwilling to have such service.
The personality of Godhead, or the Parameshwara Param Brahman, according to the Shruti, has nothing to do. He has no equal, nor does anyone excel him. He has unlimited potency, and his every action is carried out systematically in his natural and perfect ways. That the Supreme Personality of Godhead is full in himself, and he has nothing to accept from anyone else, including the great demigods like Brahma, others asking for the favor of the goddess of fortune. And despite such prayers, she declined to award such favors. But still she renders service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although he has nothing to accept from her. The Personality of Godhead.
Why the recording stop? Excuse me. Why did the recording stop when you made me the host? It's like, Chaitanya Prema dropped out. Salika. Okay, got it back. All right, sorry. Carry on.
Sorry. My network went off.
The personality of Godhead in his Gavodatasa Vishnu Krishna begets Brahma, the first created person in the material world, from his navel lotus stem and not in the womb of the goddess of fortune, who is eternally engaged in his service. There are some of the instances of his complete independence and perfection. He has nothing to do does not mean that he is impersonal. is transcendentally so full in inconceivable potency that simply by his willing, everything is done without physical or personal endeavor. He is called, therefore, Yogeshwara, or the Lord of all mystic powers.
Okay, that's pretty clear, but Krishna doesn't need anyone else to do anything. Even in his expansions like Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, which is a portion of Krishna. But most people that know about Vishnu even, I don't think they even know about Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, the Vishnu of this universe. But they don't know about the Karnadakashaya Vishnu, who's creating all the Vishnus and all the universes. What to speak of knowing about Krishna. 21. Who can be worthy of the name of the Supreme Lord but the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna? Brahmaji collected the water emanating from the nails of his feet in order to award it to Lord Shiva as a worshipable welcome. This very water is purifying the whole universe, including Lord Shiva. And that's when Vamandev was stretching his step to take the whole universe, he broke through the coverings of the universe, and the water from the causal ocean came in, and that became the Ganges. After it washed the feet of the Lord, then Brahma collected it in his water pot. Then it went down to earth, and Lord Shiva caught it on his head. He got purified. Another mystery. The conception of many gods in the Vedic literatures is by the ignorant is completely wrong. The Lord is one without a second. But he expands himself into many. And this is confirmed in the Vedas. Such expansions of the Lord are limitless. Some of them are the Supreme Lord himself in full, and some are the living entities. The living entities are not as powerful as the Lord's plenary expansions. Therefore, there are two different types of expansions. Lord Brahma is generally one of the living entities. And Lord Shiva is between the Lord and the living entities. He is Shiva Tattva. There's only one. There's no other Lord Shiva. No one else in that Tattva. We are all Jiva Tattva, including Brahma, but amongst the Jivas, there's a lot of differences in material qualities. But even Brahma and Shiva, who are so great, they're never equal or greater than Vishnu, the Supreme Lord. The goddess of fortune and all the powerful demigods, like Brahma and Shiva, are engaged in the worship of Vishnu or Lord Krishna. Therefore, who can be more powerful than Mukunda, Krishna? And thus factually deserve to be called the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The goddess of fortune, Lakshmiji, Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva are not independently powerful. They are powerful as expansions of the Supreme Lord, and all of them are engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. And so also are the living entities. There are 4 sects of worshipful devotees of the Lord, and the chief amongst them are Brahma Sampradaya, Rudra Sampradaya, Sri Sampradaya, descending directly from Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi. Respectively, besides the above-mentioned 3 Sampradayas, there's the Kumar Sampradaya, descending from Sanat Kumar. All of the 4 original Sampradayas are still scrupulously engaged in transcendental service of the Lord up to the present day, and they all declare that Lord Krishna, Mukunda, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that no other personality is equal to or greater than him. The Lord Chaitanya studied these sampradayas. Bhaktisiddhanta studied them very much. He took the Tridandi sannyas from one of them, and in his original temple, if we go around the deity, he has an alcove with the deity of the acharya of each of those sampradayas. And honoring them. So Lord Chaitanya, he took two essential things from each of these sampradayas. From the Madhva Sampradaya, he took the defeating of Mayavadi philosophy, especially Madhva fought that really strongly. And he wrote a book, 108 Refutations of Mayavad philosophy, where he stated the Mayavadi statements and then defeated them. You can find that online if you're interested. It's quite valuable. Although in Africa, you're not going to meet so many big Mayavadis, but the Indian people who are raised Hindu, mostly they're Mayavadi. They're not really Mayavadis, but they're confused. They don't know what's what. And the deity is eternal. Madhva established very elaborate deity worship. From the Lakshmi Sampradaya, that's now called the Sri Sampradaya, Ramanujacharya, pure bhakti with no material desires, and service to the Vaishnavas. Ramanuja's last instructions were practically all about service to the Vaishnavas. Serving devotees is the most important thing. And from the Vishnu, from the Rudra Sampradaya, that's Vishnu Swami, total surrender to Krishna in Raga Marg. They teach that. And from the Kumar Sampradaya, taking shelter of Radharani and worshiping the gopis. So that's a very advanced one. The four Kumaras. All right. And so then Lord Chaitanya summarized all that philosophy and everything from all the sampradayas with this Achintya Beta Beta Tattva, simultaneously one and different. Very important to remember that. Otherwise, we can't really understand anything. Everything is a mystery. Because especially in relation to our mundane education and scientific, trying to calculate everything and put everything into specific rank and categories, and it's not like that. It's all very subtle. But it's Krishna, and Krishna is everything. He's death personified, and he's immortality. He's spirit, he's matter, everything is within Krishna. It's all explained very nicely in chapter 9 of the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, let's move on. Who would like to read the next one? The purport? Oh, no, 22.
Yes. Jyoti
Purport.
Sharif was now read. Jyoti Sharif is there. Tamala Krishna Prabhu. And any one of you?
Hare Krishna. Yes. Only the self-control can gradually be attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Self-control means, come again.
Translation first.
Okay, thank you. Self-control persons who are attached to the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna, can all of a sudden give up the word of material attachment, including the gross body and subtle mind, and go away to attain the higher perfection of renounced order of life, by which non-violence can renounce consequential. Purport. Only the self-control can gradually be attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Self-control means not including the sense enjoyment more than is necessary. And those who are not, Krishna?
Not indulging,
Not indulging in sense enjoyment more than necessary. And those who are not self-controlled are giving over the senses enjoyment to sense enjoyment. Dry philosophical speculation is a subtle sense enjoyment of the mind. Sense enjoyment leads one to the path of darkness. Those who are self-controlled can make progress on the path of liberation from conditional life of material existence. The Vedas, therefore, enjoin that one should not go on the path of darkness, but should make a progressive liberation. Self-control is actually achieved not by artificial stopping the senses from material enjoyment, but by becoming virtually attached to the Supreme Lord by engaging one unalloyed senses in the transcendental service of the Lord. The senses can be forcibly coped, but they can be given proper engagement. Purified senses, therefore, are always engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord. This professional stage of sense enjoyment is called Bhakti Yoga. So those who are attached to the means of Bhakti Yoga are virtually self-controlled and can all of a sudden give up their homely or bodily attachment for the service of the Lord. This is called Paramhamsa stage. Hamsa or Swami accept only milk out of mix of milk and water. Similarly, those who accept the service of the Lord instead of Maya service are called the Paramhamsa. They are naturally qualified with all the good attributes, such a prideless freedom from vanity, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, respectability, worship, devotion, and sincerity. All those godly qualities exist in the devotee of the Lord spontaneously. Such Paramhamsa who are completely give up to the service of the Lord are very rare. They are very rare, even among the liberated souls. Rare non-violence means freedom from envy. In this world, everyone is envious of fallen being, but the perfect Paramhamsa, being completely give up to the service of the Lord, is the perfectly non-envious. He loved every living being in relation with the Supreme Lord. Rare renunciation means perfect dependence on God. Every living being is depending
on someone else because he is so made. Actually, everyone is depending on the mercy of the Supreme Lord. But when one forgets his relation with the Lord, he becomes dependent on the condition of material nature. Renunciation means renouncing one's depending on the condition of material nature, and thou becoming completely dependent on the mercy of the Lord. Real dependence means complete faith in the mercy of the Lord without dependence on the condition of matter. Those Paramahansa stage is highest perfectional stage in Bhakti Yoga, the process of devotional service to the Supreme Lord. Hare Krishna.
All right, very nice one. Any comment there or question? Something we can get a lot of realization from. Envy is mentioned. Envy is deadly. That's what brings us into the material world. We're envious of Krishna. Why can't I be in the supreme position? Why is everybody worshiping him? But then we come here, we forget Krishna, but we become envious of anyone who has any kind of opulence. So devotees have to follow Krishna, be non-envious. And that means we want to serve, love. Love is kind of opposite. Envy, the word in Sanskrit is dvesha and dvesha, and it means hatred also. Envy, hatred, same word. So it's rare, devotees are rare, and durlabha manava janmanamasa, even human life is rare, but devotees are very rare. And all the devotees we have that are trying to be devotees, that are chanting the holy name regularly, they're trying to serve, they're very special, and we should remember that and be very careful, how we treat devotees. Always be honoring and respectful to all devotees. I see that the devotees are, in Africa, I've seen tremendous improvements in the last quite a few years, especially since Bhakti Tirtha left. Somehow he empowered a lot of devotees. But the quarreling and envy is much, much reduced because devotees are becoming advanced. But we have to be careful. And so, but I see, like when a devotee leaves their body, like we just did Ramanuja Prabhu, so nice glorification, everybody's, and if we can have that mentality before someone leaves their body, and we're all always thinking of all the good things about every devotee, we would have the most attractive society in the world, and thousands of people would be wanting to join. So that's what we need to practice, to think, Bhakti Tirtha said we should think that the devotees we're dealing with, they may be the ones that are around at the time we leave our body. So we want to have a good relationship, but that's one way. But the main thing is, everybody, when Bali Prabhu left, after so much up and down with him, but we could only remember the good. Ramanuja Prabhu, we had some, up and down, but he was a great kirtan leader. So that meant he was getting special blessings. He loved to chant. He loved the holy name. He loved to get everybody out on Sankirtan. He loved to distribute books. So we should always focus on all the good about everybody all the time. Don't wait till I die, to give me flowers and do something now. All right. Okay, anybody comment on that? Because I've seen beautiful, beautiful glorifications, but I don't hear that, otherwise. But when someone leaves their body, and that's everywhere it's like that. Someone leaves their body, and You know, the Dandavats is full of glorification of them and everything, but otherwise you never heard of them. Nobody would talk like that. So we want to come up to the point of always glorifying all devotees all the time. All right. So the next verse, because we want to cover a lot of ground here. So this is Sutta Goswami speaking now after the rishis have glorified him so much. So then he gives a humble reply also. O rishis, who are as powerfully pure as the sun, I shall try to describe to you the transcendental pastimes of Vishnu as far as my knowledge allows. As the birds fly in the sky, as far as their capacity allows, so do the learned devotees describe the Lord as far as their realization allows. So the sky, different birds have different capacity. So the same way we can speak, you know, according to our capacity, but if we really surrender to Krishna, then he will speak through us way beyond our own capacity, which is practically nothing. But so some birds, like a chicken, they can just fly like a little bit, maybe enough to get up on the fence or something. But there's some big swans and eagles, they can fly even over the Himalayan mountains. And there's even birds Prabhupada described, I heard in a walk in the garden one night, that can fly between planets. They're such big birds. So they have their different capacities and they can fly different. At one time, the crow, they can fly back and forth and around, very fancy. And one puffed up crow, he challenged a swan to a flying contest. So they started flying out across the sea. And the swan is just, you know, they just fly straight. And the crow is going and doing loop to loop and up and down and around and thinking I'm such a much better flyer than this swan. But then they were getting further and further from the land, and the crow was becoming very tired, and finally he couldn't fly anymore. And he had to beg the swan that he could ride on his back, and he'd give him a ride back to the land. So you can interpret that as you like, but okay, purport.
Jyotisharu Prabhu, do you want to read? Jyotisharu Prabhu has not read. Do you want to
Yes.
read?
I will read.
Okay, go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
Purport 23. The Supreme Absolute Truth is unlimited. No living being can know about the unlimited by his limited capacity. The Lord is impersonal, personal, and localized. By his impersonal features, he is all-pervading Brahman. By his localized feature, he is present in everyone's heart as a supreme soul, and his unlimited personal feature, he is the object of transcendental loving service by his fortunate associate, the pure devotee. The pastime of the Lord is different features can only be estimated partly by the great learned devotees. So Srila Sutta Goswami has rightly taken this position in describing the pastime of the Lord as far as he has realized. Factually, only the Lord himself can describe himself, and his learned devotee also can describe him as far as the Lord gives him the power of description. Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, should I continue? Should I continue, Maharaj?
Yeah.
Okay, translation 24-25. Once upon a time, Maharaj Parikshit, while engaged in hunting in the forest with bow and arrows, become extremely fatigued, hungry and thirsty while following the stages. While searching for the reservoir of water, he entered the hermitage of the well-known Samik Rishi and saw a sage sitting silently with closed eyes. Purport: the Supreme Lord is so kind to his pure devotee that in proper time he calls such a devotee up to him and thus create an auspicious circumstance for the devotee. Maharaj Parikshit was a pure devotee of the Lord, and there was no reason for him to become extremely fatigued, hungry, and thirsty, because a devotee of the Lord never becomes perturbed by such bodily demand. But by the desire of the Lord, even such a devotee can become extremely fatigued and thirsty just to create a situation favorable for his renunciation of worldly activities. One has to give up all the attachment for worldly relation before one is able to go back to Godhead. And thus, when a devotee is too much absorbed in worldly affair, the Lord creates a situation to cause indifference. The Supreme Lord never forgets his pure devotee, even though he may be engaged in so-called worldly affairs. Sometimes he creates an awkward situation and the devotee becomes obliged to renounce all worldly affairs. The devotee can understand by the single signal of the Lord, but others take it to be unfavorable and frustrating. Maharaj Parikshit was to become the medium for the revelation of Srimad Bhagavatam by Lord Shri Krishna, as his grandfather Arjuna was a medium for the Bhagavad Gita. Had Arjuna not been taken up with an illusion of family affection by the will of the Lord, the Bhagavad Gita would not have been spoken by the Lord himself for the good of all the concerned. Similarly, had Maharaj Parikshit is not been fatigued, hungry, and thirsty at this time, Srimad Bhagavatam would not have been spoken by Srila Shukadeva Goswami, the prime authority of Srimad Bhagavatam. So, this is the prelude to the circumstance under which Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken for the benefit of all concerned. The prelude, therefore, begins with the word once upon a time. Can I continue, Maharaj?
No, wait a minute, just so.
Hare
So
Krishna.
Krishna is making all these arrangements for the sake of enlightening the world and giving everyone a chance to hear the Bhagavatam, hear the Bhagavad Gita. So like Arjuna was apparently bewildered in ignorance, and Maharaj Parikshit acted in a way completely out of character for him. You know, in Kshatriya, they could they can become thirsty, but not overwhelmed by it, not bewildered by it, not insult the sage or anything, but it's just a pastime. There's others like Bharat Maharaj said that he fell down, but he didn't really fall down, and it was also just to make a show, to show us the dangers of, you know, becoming attached or neglecting your spiritual activities. You could fall down. All right, somebody can carry on. So this is a very important, you know, incident because it precipitated the whole speaking of the Srimad Bhagavatam and ultimately the beginning of Kali Yuga.
Maharaj, when adversary situations or circumstances seemingly unpalatable happen in our lives, how can we understand whether it is Krishna's arrangement or it is as a result of our past karma?
Well, maybe we can't. So we should, everything is Krishna's arrangement, but it's not necessarily Krishna's will, that we have desires, or we create karma where something has to be arranged for us to fulfill that karma. But that's not like Krishna planned it out. Krishna just fulfills our desires. So one example I like, and it's simple, one Mataji Nandarani, she was a cook in the very early days. And she burnt the sweet rice. So Prabhupada, she was a brand new devotee. And Prabhupada said, why did you burn the sweet rice? And she said, well, Krishna's will, Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, don't blame Krishna for your stupidity. So the materialists that, supposedly believe in God, I think we've seen this if you see TV shows with doctors and stuff, or even if you have experience. If the patient dies, the doctors will say, it's in God's hands. When they realize there's nothing they can do and the patient's going to die, it's in God's hands, don't blame us. But when the patient survives, they don't give God credit for it. Right?
Yeah.
Like one time America, they had some astronaut going somewhere and they lost radio contact. And, they need that to guide the astronauts to get back to Earth or something. So it was a big panic on TV all over. And they tried everything but nothing was working. So they requested everyone in America to pray, that we can get these astronauts back. And then when they did get them back, though, they never said, oh, thank God. They said we did it, our technology conquered. So these things are going on. The devotee, ideally, if something goes good, he'll give all credit to the Lord. And if something goes wrong, he'll think, well, it must be somehow, what's wrong with me? I didn't surrender fully enough or something. Not that we condemn ourselves and, commit suicide, but, understand, don't blame Krishna, but give Krishna credit when something goes good. But Krishna will give you credit because you surrendered. You tried to depend on Krishna, but don't give yourself credit. Krishna will give you credit, and he'll arrange that others give you credit. But always understand it's really Krishna. So conditioning is the other way around. When things go wrong, that's God's arrangement, and when it goes right, it's mine by my endeavor. All right. Now here's a description of a real trance. This Muni is in a real trance, and I don't think any of us in our japa get to this condition, but that's a real samadhi. So please read.
The Muni's sense organs, breath, mind, and intelligence were all restrained from material activities, and he was situated in a trance apart from the three: wakefulness, dream, and unconsciousness, having achieved a transcendental position qualitatively equal with the Supreme Absolute. Purport. It appears that the Muni in whose hermitage the king entered was in yogi trance. The transcendental position is attained by three processes, namely the process of Jnana, or theoretical knowledge of transcendence, the process of yoga, or factual realization of trance by manipulation of the psychological and physiological functions of the body, and the most approved process of Bhakti Yoga, or the engagement of sense in the devotion or service of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita also, we have the information of the gradual development of perception from matter to a living entity. Our material mind and body develops from the living entity, the soul, and being influenced by the three qualities of matter. We forget our real identity. The Jnana process theoretically speculates about the reality of the soul, but Bhakti Yoga factually engages the spirit soul in activity. The perception of matter is transcendent to still subtler state of the senses. The senses are transcendent to the subtler mind, and then to breathing activity, and gradually to intelligence. Beyond the intelligence, the living soul is realized by the mechanical activities of the yoga system or practice of meditation, restraining the senses, regulating the breathing system, and applying intelligence to rise to the transcendental position. This trance stops all material activities of the body. The king saw the Muni in that position. He also saw the Muni as follows. Next, text 27. The sage in meditation was covered by the skin of his thigh, and long compressed air was scattered all over him. The king, whose palate was dry from the taste, asked him for water. Purport. The king, being thirsty, asked the sage for water. That such a great devotee and king asked for water from a sage absorbing trance was certainly providential. Otherwise, there was no chance of such a unique happening. Maharaj Parikshit was thus placed in an awkward position so that gradually Srimad Bhagavatam could be revealed.
Krishna has a strange way of doing things that we would never think of, right?
Exactly.
So devotee, we can't understand usually, but whatever is happening, even though it may seem very not nice, is ultimately for good. We may not always understand that. We're being mistreated or something's going wrong, and sometimes devotees are removed from their position, or whatever happens. But Krishna has some plan. So best way is just, like Krishna says, equal in happiness and distress, honor and dishonor, all those things. Just remember Krishna, that Ishvara Para Krishna. The king, not receiving by any formal welcome by means of being offered a seat, a place, water, and sweet addresses, considered himself neglected and became angry. Now that's not normal for Parikshit, a great devotee. Purport.
The law of reception in the code of the Vedic principle states that even if an enemy is received at home, he must be received without respect. He should not be given a chance to understand that he has come into the house of an enemy. When Lord Krishna, accompanied by Arjuna and Bhima, approached Jarasandha in Magadha, respectable enemies were given a royal reception by King Jarasandha. The guest enemy, namely Bhima, was to fight with Jarasandha, and yet they were given a grand reception. At night, they used to sit down together as friends and guests, and in the day, they used to fight, risking life and death. That was the law of reception. The reception law enjoins that a poor man who has nothing to offer his guest should be good enough to offer a straw mat for sitting, a glass of water for drinking, and some sweet words. Therefore, to receive a guest, either friend or foe, there is no expense. It is only a question of good manners. When Maharaj Parikshit entered the door of Samika Rishi, he did not expect a royal reception by the rishis because he knew that saints and rishis are not materially rich men. But he never expected that a seat of straw, a glass of water, and some sweet words would be denied to him. He was not an ordinary guest, nor was he an enemy of the rishi, and therefore the cold reception by the rishi astonished the king greatly. As a matter of fact, the king was right to get angry to the rishi when he needed a glass of water very badly. To become angry in such a grave situation was not unnatural for the king. But because the king himself was not less than a great saint, his becoming angry and taking actions were astonishing. So it must be accepted that it was so ordained by the supreme will of the Lord. The king was a great devotee of the Lord, and the saint was also as good as the king. But by the will of the Lord, the circumstances were so created that they became ways to the kings, becoming unattached to family connection and governmental activities, and thus becoming a completely surrendered soul unto the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. The merciful Lord sometimes creates such awkward positions for these pure devotees, for his pure devotees, in order to drag them towards himself from the might of material existence. But outwardly, the situations appear to be frustrating to the devotees. The devotees of the Lord are always under the protection of the Lord. And in any condition, frustration or success, the Lord is the supreme guide for the devotees. The pure devotees therefore accept all conditions of frustration as blessings from the Lord.
All right. So normally the king would be greeting and honoring a sage, because the king, the sage is a Brahmana, is like above the king. So, but Krishna made all these arrangements. It's a transcendental drama, but to teach us lessons also. But the sage was actually in a trance, so that means his senses were not functioning. He couldn't hear anything or see anything or perceive that anyone was coming around him. He was totally absorbed internally. But greeting people nicely is very important. I've noted in Africa that part of the culture is still quite strong, very expert at welcoming people and treating guests nicely. It's very important. Like I went to the bank here the other day, and the next day I got an email with all kinds of questions. How was your visit to the bank? Were you welcomed nicely? Were you treated nicely? Did they help you properly? Did they, how long did you have to wait before anybody took care of you? And, so that's, we should be like that also. So that, in training devotees, take care of guests nicely, answer the phone nicely, like companies have courses that their employees take for answering the phone, and what to say when guests come, make sure they know how to help everybody, and a good attitude. And that's, for preaching, of course, most super important, but it's culture. Automatically, namaste, like the Indians say, it means, I saw one preacher in America, he's an African descent person, but he's saying namaste, say it loud. This means the divinity in me is honoring the divinity in you. And he's telling all his congregation, this is how you should, I want you to greet each other now like this. Namaste. The divinity in me honors the divinity in you. This way we won't have so much fighting and everything will be much better. So, I find here in New York, and I go out and just chop a walk or something, quite a few people will just fold their hands and say namaste, and they're not Indian, just local people. All right, let's carry on this wonderful pastime, which is, provided for the reading, the speaking of the Bhagavatam. The law of reception and the codes of Vedic principle. You read that already, right? Yeah. O Brahmanas, thus the king, due to a circumstance of extreme hunger and thirst, unprecedentedly directed his anger and envy toward the Brahmana sage. Unprecedented. Never happened before. For a king like Parikshit to become angry and envious, especially towards a sage and a Brahmana, was undoubtedly unprecedented. The king knew well that Brahmanas, sages, children, women, and old men are always beyond the jurisdiction of punishment. Similarly, the king, even though he commits a great mistake, is never to be considered a wrongdoer. But in this case, Maharaj Parikshit became angry and envious towards a sage due to thirst and hunger by the will of the Lord. The king was right to punish his subject for coldly receiving him or neglecting him. But because the culprit was a sage and a Brahmana, it was unprecedented. As the Lord is never envious of anyone, so also the Lord's devotees are never envious of anyone. The only justification for Maharaj Parikshit's behavior is that it was ordained by the Lord. Now, in this case, if I get angry and insult you, then I shouldn't think, well, you should be happy. This is the will of the Lord. I should think somehow or other I slipped. Okay, let's finish it up. Next. Someone else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, can I read?
Yes.
Okay, 30th. Translation. While leaving, the king, being so insulted, picked up the lifeless snake with his bow and angrily put it on the shoulder of the sage. Then he returned to his palace. Purport. The king thus treated a sage tit for tat, although he was never accused to such silly actions by the will of the Lord. The king, while going away, found a dead snake in the front of him, and he thought that a sage who had coldly received him thus might be coldly rewarded by being offered a garland of the dead snake. In the ordinary course of dealing, this was not very unnatural. But in the case of Maharaj Parikshit, dealing with the Brahmana sage, this was certainly unprecedented. It so happened by the will of the Lord. Maharaj, should I continue?
If you like, you
Yeah.
read it very nicely and clearly.
Trance
So
31. Upon returning, he began to contemplate and argue within himself whether the sage had actually been in meditation with senses concentrated and eyes closed, or whether he had just been feigning trance just to avoid receiving a lower kshatriya. Purport: the king, being a devotee of the Lord, did not approve of his own action, and thus he began to wonder whether the sage was really in the trance or was just pretending in order to avoid receiving the king, who was a kshatriya and therefore lower in a rank. Repentance come in the mind of the good soul as soon as he commits something wrong. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Srila Ji Goswami do not believe that the king action was due to his past misdeed. The arrangements was so made by the Lord just to call the king back home, back to Godhead. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, the plan was made by the will of the Lord, and by the will of the Lord, the situation of frustration was created. The plan was that for his so-called misdeed, the king could be cursed by an inexperienced Brahmana, boy infected by the influence of Kali, and thus the king would leave his heart, health, and home for good. His connection with Srila Shukadev Goswami would enable the presentation of the great Srimad Bhagavatam, which is considered to be the book incarnation of the Lord. This book, Incarnation of the Lord, gives much fascinating information of the transcendental pastime of the Lord, like his Rasa Leela with the spiritual cowherd damsels of Vrinda Vrijbhumi. This specific pastime of the Lord has spatial significance because anyone who properly learns about the particular pastime of the Lord will certainly be dissuaded from mundane sex desire and be placed on the path of sublime devotional service to the Lord. The pure devotee mundane frustration is meant to elevate the devotee to the higher transcendental position by placing Arjuna and the Pandavas in frustration due to the intrigue of their cousin brothers.
intrigue.
Intrigue, intrigue of their cousin brothers. The prelude of the battle of Kurukshetra was created by the Lord. This was to incarnate the sound representative of the Lord, Bhagavad Gita. So by placing King Parikshit in an awkward position, the incarnation of Srimad Bhagavatam was created by the will of the Lord. Being distressed by hunger and thirst was only a show, because the king endured much even in the womb of his mother. He was never disturbed by the grailing heat of the Brahmastra released by Aswathama. The king's distressed condition was certainly unprecedented. The devotee like Maharaj Parikshit are powerful enough to forbear such distress by the will of the Lord, and they are never disturbed. The situation in this case was therefore all planned by the Lord.
Well, again, Donna, this is playing up more than just arranging for the speaking of the Bhagavatam. Krishna was calling Parikshit back home, back to Godhead also by this arrangement. So it's described that Krishna is a genius, and whatever he does, accomplishes many other things at the same time. Okay, someone else? And Prickett normally wouldn't get disturbed. He already tolerated being burned up in the womb and so many things.
Can I read Maharaj?
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Text 32. The sage had a son who was very powerful. Being a Brahmana's son, while he was playing with inexperienced boys, he heard of his father's distress, which was occasioned by the king. Then and there, the boy spoke as follows. Purport. Due to Maharaj Parikshit's good government, even a boy of tender age who was playing with other inexperienced boys could become as powerful as a qualified Brahmana. This boy was known as Sringi and achieved good training in Brahmacharya by his father, so that he could be as powerful as a Brahmana, even at that age. But because the age of Kali was seeking an opportunity to spoil the cultural heritage of the four orders of life, the inexperienced boy gave a chance for the age of Kali to enter into the field of Vedic culture. Hatred of the lower orders of life began from this Brahmana boy. Under the influence of Kali, and thus cultural life began to dwindle day after day. The first victim of Brahmanical injustice was Maharaj Parikshit, and thus the protection given by the king against the onslaught of Kali was lacking. Text 33. The Brahmana's son Sringi said, "Oh, just look at the sins of the rulers who, like crows and watchdogs at the door, perpetrate sins against their masters, contrary to the principles governing servants." Purport. The Brahmanas are considered to be the head and the brains of the social body, and the Kshatriyas are considered to be the arms of the social body. The arms are required to protect the body from all harm, but the arms must act according to the direction of the head and brain. That is a natural arrangement made by the supreme order, for it is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita that four social orders or castes, namely the Brahmanas, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Sudras, are set up according to quality and work done by them. Naturally, the son of a Brahmana has a good chance to become a Brahmana by the direction of his qualified father. As the son of a medical practitioner has a very good chance to become a qualified medical practitioner. So the caste system is quite scientific. The son must take advantage of the father's qualification and thus or a medical. One cannot become a bride all scriptures and social orders. Attend that required Brahmanical power, both by birth and by training. But he was lacking in culture because he was an inexperienced boy. By the influence of Kali, the son of a Brahmana became puffed up with Brahmanical power and thus wrongly compared Maharaj Parikshit to crows and watchdogs. The king is certainly the watchdog of the state in the sense that he keeps vigilant eyes over the border of the state for its protection and defense. But to address him as a watchdog is a sign of a less cultured boy. Thus, the downfall of the Brahmanical powers began as they gave importance to birthright without culture. The downfall of the Brahmana caste began in the age of Kali. And since Brahmanas are the heads of the social order, all other orders of society also began to deteriorate. This beginning of Brahmanical deterioration was highly deployed by the father of Syringi, as we will find. Should I continue, Maharaj?
Yeah.
Text 34. The descendants of the kingly orders are definitely designated as watchdogs, and they must kill themselves at the door. On what grounds can dogs enter the house and claim to dine with the master on the same plate? Purport. The inexperienced Brahmana boy certainly knew that the king asked for water from his father, and the father did not respond. He tried to explain away his father's inhospitality in an impertinent manner, befitting an uncultured boy. He was not at all sorry for the king's not being well received. On the contrary, he justified the wrong act in a way characteristics of the Brahmanas of Kali Yoga. He compared the king to a watchdog, and so it was wrong for the king to enter the home of a Brahmana and ask for water from the same pot. The dog is certainly reared by its master, but that does not mean that the dog shall claim to dine and drink from the same pot. This mentality of false prestige is the cause of downfall of the perfect social order. And we can see that in the beginning, it was started by the inexperienced son of a Brahmana. As the dog is never allowed to enter within the room unhurt, although it is reared by the master. Similarly, according to Syringi, the king had no right to enter the house of Samika Rishi. According to the boy's opinion, the king was on the wrong side and not his father, and thus he justified his silent father. 35.
No, wait a minute. Just
Should I continue, Maharaj?
rest all through that. This is the real beginning of Kali Yuga, and this is where the Brahmanas started to feel superior and disrespectful to the so-called lower caste. All kinds of things started happening from this particular incident, from this one boy, immature boy, misusing his power. So quite amazing, something to think about. And now, at least in America, dogs do live in the house and sleep in the same bed and sometimes even eat off the same plate. The people will eat and then they'll hand the plate to the dog and the dog will lick it off and then they'll use that plate again and again. So that's Kali Yuga also. Not that we hate dogs, but they're being treated, very intimately. Although dogs have a lot of good qualities we should learn from. They're very loyal. Okay, now want to read again? Who's next? Different.
$35. After the departure of Lord Sri Krishna.
Somebody else to read.
Okay.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, can I read?
Jyoti Sharup Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhuji. 35, translation. After the departure of Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead and supreme ruler of everyone, these upstart have flourished, our protector being gone. Therefore, I myself shall take up this matter and punish them. Just witness my power. Purport. The inexperienced Brahmana, puffed up by the little Brahma Tejas, become influenced by the spell of Kali Yuga. Maharaj Parikshit gave license to Kali to live in 4 places as mentioned herein before. But by his very expert government, the personality of Kali could hardly find the place allotted him. The personality of Kali Yuga, therefore, was seeking the opportunity to establish authority. And by the grace of the Lord, he found a goal in the puffed up, inexperienced son of Brahmana. The little Brahmana wanted to show his power as prowess in destruction, and he had the audacity to punish such a great king as Maharaj Parikshit. He wanted to take the place of Lord Krishna after his departure. These are the principal sign of upstart who want to take the place of Sri Krishna under the influence of the age of Kali. An upstart with little power want to become an incarnation of the Lord. There are many false incarnations after the departure of the Lord Krishna from the face of the globe, and they are misleading the innocent public by accepting the spiritual obedience of the general mass of the people to maintain false prestige. In other words, the personality of Kali got the opportunity to regain through this son of the Brahmana, Shringi. 36, translation.
This now, like we can see sometimes in our movement or in any spiritual movement, when the acharya leaves, there are some disciples that think, okay, now I'm the acharya and I will take care of chastising all the others, and they're not proper, and so many things like that can happen. This is all, Kali Yuga is so powerful. So this boy had a little bit of power, so he was puffed up by it. His father was very upset to hear about this. Father had much more power, but the father also had, good sense. He had sense control. All right, one more. Let's see how many we can fit in.
36, translation. The son of Shringi, his eyes red hot with anger, touched the water of the river Kaushika while speaking to the playmates and discharged the following thunderbolt of the word. Purport. The circumstances under which Maharaj Parikshit was cursed were simply childish, as it appears from this verse. Shringi was showing his impudency among his playmates, who were innocent. Any sane man would have prevented him from doing such a great harm to all human society by killing a king like Maharaj Parikshit, just to make a show of acquired Brahmanical power. The inexperienced son of the Brahmana committed a great mistake. 37.
Okay, you like it, huh? Okay.
Yeah. Translation. The Brahmana's son cursed the king thus. On the seventh day from today, a snake bird will bite the most wretched son of that dynasty, Maharaj Parikshit, because of his having broken the laws of etiquette by insulting my father. Purport. Thus, the beginning of misuses of Brahmanical power began, and gradually the Brahmanas in the age of Kali became devoid of both Brahmanical power and culture. The Brahmana boy considered Maharaj Parikshit to be Kulangara, or the wretched of the dynasty. But factually, the Brahmana boy himself was so, because only from him did the Brahmana caste become powerless. Like the snake whose poison teeth are broken, the snake is a fearful as long as his poison teeth are there. Otherwise, he is fearful only to children. The personality of Kali conquered the Brahmana boy first, and gradually the other castes. Thus, the whole scientific system of the order of society in this age has assumed the form of a vitiated caste system, which is now being uprooted by other class of men, similarly influenced by the age of Kali. One should see to the root cause of vitiation and not try to condemn the system as it is, without knowledge of its scientific value.
All right. Let's see. We're not going to be able to finish this chapter, but meditate on this and see how much we're influenced by Kali, and because we are conditioned and we're raised up in very intense Kali Yuga type education and everything. So we've been rescued by Lord Chaitanya, Srila Prabhupada, and all the devotees. But these things are smoldering, so we have to be careful. We get a little upset about something, we may act, according to the Kali Yuga conditioning rather than our spiritual conditioning. So we have to be careful and not, like I said, there's a tendency to look out to see how other people are influenced by Kali, and I want to criticize or chastise them. But first we should be looking inside. You might have seen that book by Bhakti Siddhanta that Jayapati Kumar has translated, called Vaishnav K. That means, what kind of Vaishnav are you? And the point of the book is introspection, talking to oneself. But we had one devotee in Thailand, he read that book and he went around just blasting every other devotee. What? Look at you, you're like this, why are you like that? Took it completely backwards. He's supposed to be checking himself out, but he thought I'm perfect. So now I have to correct everyone else. Sometimes it is our duty, but when we want to teach someone, we shouldn't have to be very careful when to do it, how to do it, who should do it. Okay, so we'll stop there. Time is up. Thank you very much for being on time and coming. And
Thank you very much.
homework, write something, at least for yourself, what I'm getting from this and how it can apply to my life and how we can use it to improve our society so that we can attract more people and we can keep people. All right. Ramanuja Prabhu Ki Jai.
Jai.
Now, in honor of him, there should be much more Harinam Sankirtan, because he especially liked Harinam Sankirtan. Right?
Yes, Maharaj.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Please let's chant loudly.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare
Hare
Hare Rama, Hare Rama.
Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Vaishnava.